Hi, my name's Mr. William, and on the night of my own birthday party, my own child stood up and told me the house I built with my hands was theirs now. Folks smiled, clapped, like I was some old fool being replaced. But behind them, in the shadows, stood someone holding a truth that could burn this whole lie to the ground. How did it come to this? And what happened when that truth finally stepped forward? I woke up with a strange kind of stillness that morning, not the kind that comforts you, but the kind that makes you wonder what's missing. The house creaked the same way it always did, but quieter somehow, like it was holding its breath. I lay there for a moment, just listening. No TV from the living room, no feet thudding across the floor like when the kids were young. I made my way to the kitchen, still wearing the slippers Mary gave me before she passed. Boiled water, set the same chipped mug on the counter, same creamer, same silence. 69 today. I hadn't had a real birthday gathering in, what, 10 years? Maybe more. Phone buzzed. Daddy, my daughter Rochelle chirped on the other end. Don't make dinner tonight. We got something special planned. I stood there holding the phone, blinking like she'd just said she was moving to Mars. You remember today? She laughed like I was being silly. Course I do. Be ready by 6. 6. All right. By 5:30, the air had shifted. Music crept into the house from somebody's Bluetooth speaker. Laughter followed, my grandkids running through the front door like it was a theme park. I tried to catch one, Deshaun, for a hug, but he was too busy chasing something on a screen. Rochelle came in balancing cupcakes and shouting orders. Her younger brother, Micah, trailed behind, juggling soda bottles. The room felt alive again, full of voices, smells, and movement. Then he came in, DeMarco. Late as usual, wearing one of those skinny suits, sunglasses still on inside the house. He walked in like he was the mayor, holding an overpriced bottle of wine like it was a peace offering. Pops, he said, arms wide, look at you. 69 and still sharper than most cats I know. I nodded, forcing a smile. He hadn't visited in months. We sat, ate, talked, sort of. They talked. I mostly listened, watching the way Rochelle and Micah kept glancing at each other, whispering. I chalked it up to family banter. Then DeMarco stood, clinking his glass. To new beginnings, he said. I raised my own cup of ginger ale. It felt off, but I played along. Things didn't feel right, though. Something was shifted. There were small details only a man who's lived a full life would notice. The family photos from the mantel, gone, replaced by generic framed prints that looked like hotel art. My old recliner, replaced with a brand new leather one I never asked for. What happened to my chair? I asked Rochelle. Just freshening up the place, Daddy. You deserve some nice things. I smiled politely, but I felt the weight of something coming. Then a stranger walked in. Slick suit, briefcase. DeMarco called him a friend and offered him a drink. Said he was just stopping by. I excused myself, walked out back to the porch. The air was cooler there, and I needed to breathe. I stood, hands gripping the railing, trying to piece it together. I'd lived too long not to recognize when I was being softened up for something. I came back inside just as they were lighting the cake. Everyone gathered around, singing half-heartedly. My name was on the cake, but the energy wasn't about me. DeMarco stood again. All right, he said. Before we slice this cake, we got something to share. I stared at him. My stomach tightened. We've decided it's time for Daddy to enjoy retirement. Elsewhere. Silence fell. Not the respectful kind, just heavy, uncomfortable. I looked at Rochelle, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. DeMarco pulled out papers from his pocket. You already signed this last month, remember? We talked about it. My jaw clenched. I remembered the forms. He'd said they were for a tax exemption, told me where to sign. I hadn't read it. Everything's official, DeMarco added. The notary's right here. The man stepped forward, nodding. Everyone clapped, like it was a graduation. My breath caught. I looked at their faces, smiling, cheering. Rochelle clapped too, eyes down. Micah avoided mine altogether. I wasn't part of this moment. I was the moment. A box being checked off. I opened my mouth to speak, but the music started again. Laughter returned. My voice got lost in it all. Then softly, someone tugged at my shirt. It was Jaden, my youngest grandchild. "Grandpa, are you okay?" I knelt to meet his eyes, forced a nod. My hand trembled on his back. I stood, scanned the room again. Nobody was looking at me. Then I turned, and at the doorway, behind DeMarco, stood the one person I never thought I'd see again. She stood there like time hadn't moved at all. Loretta, Mary's sister. The last time I saw her was at the funeral, when she looked me square in the eyes and said, "This ain't over." Back then, I thought grief had made her bitter. Now, she looked the same. Maybe a bit grayer, but her eyes were just as sharp. The kind of sharp that cuts without needing to say a word. The room fell quiet. Even the kids stopped bouncing around. Rochelle stiffened, and DeMarco, he damn near dropped his wine glass. Loretta stepped inside, slow and steady, wearing a dark blue dress that didn't wrinkle even when she moved. In her hand, an envelope. Not gift-wrapped, just plain, legal. She didn't speak, just nodded once in my direction. I stood frozen, heart pounding louder than the music that had just been playing. I hadn't spoken to her since the week after Mary passed. We had a falling out. She said the kids were isolating me, trying to push me into silence. I said she didn't know what she was talking about. Now she was here, uninvited, but holding all the attention in the room like she'd paid for it. One of Rochelle's friends asked, who is that?" Loretta didn't even blink. "This is my sister's house, too." I looked at her, really looked, and for the first time in years, I remembered the fire in her voice. She was always the smartest of them all, became a lawyer when most black women couldn't even get interviews. But she never bragged, she just listened. And when she spoke, you listened too. I glanced around. Micah looked annoyed, Rochelle confused, and DeMarco? He tried to keep cool, but his jaw tightened every time Loretta moved. She walked up to me and handed me the envelope, whispered, "You need to read this." DeMarco stepped forward like he was about to say something slick. Loretta turned to him, no louder, no meaner, just said, "Not now," and he stopped. That was the first real red flag. DeMarco always talked, always tried to take the air out of the room. Now he stood there swallowing his tongue. I stared at the envelope in my hands. It felt heavier than it looked. And I remembered, clear as day, DeMarco showing up 2 months ago with papers. "Just a little mortgage refinance," he'd said. "Helps with taxes. You know how it is." He smiled so wide. Took me to lunch that day, even fixed the kitchen faucet afterward. I wanted to believe we were bonding again. But then Loretta showed up tonight and everything shifted. Every hug he gave, every time he asked, "You need anything, Pops?" It all felt rehearsed now, like he'd been playing me. I remembered that night I overheard him in the backyard. Thought he was talking to his girlfriend. "Old man won't catch on," he said. "He signs anything if you tell him it's for the house." My chest tightened. I should have said something then, but I didn't want to believe it. Loretta turned back to the room, cleared her throat. "William never sold this house," she said, firm but not angry. "He was tricked." Silence again. She held up a copy of the deed paperwork. "This transfer was witnessed under pressure without full disclosure." DeMarco barked a laugh. "Auntie Loretta always been dramatic. Y'all know how she gets. Don't let her ruin the night." But then she placed a small voice recorder on the table. "Then why's your voice on this?" He froze. I didn't move. Didn't blink. I didn't want to hear it. Not yet. If that tape had what I feared, I wasn't ready to know how deep the betrayal ran. Outside, thunder rolled low across the sky. The lights flickered once. Nobody laughed now. Folks started clearing out. No more music. No more cake. No more cheer. Later that night, Loretta and I sat in the kitchen. Just us. The same kitchen Mary once danced in while frying catfish on Saturdays. "You knew," she said. "Didn't you?" I nodded slowly. Not all of it, but something. I just, I thought if I gave enough, they'd love me again. She didn't rush to respond, just sipped her tea. "You raised them better," she finally said, "but they chose worse." My hands were flat on the table. I stared at them. These same hands had built every shelf in this house, paid for braces, cleaned up after chickenpox, prom nights, heartbreaks, and still, they turned on me. "What do I do now?" I asked. She looked at me like she was waiting for me to figure it out myself. "Take it back," she said. "Not for revenge, for dignity." I shook my head. "What if folks find out? What if I look like a fool?" She stood, smoothed her dress, and said, "Then maybe it's not shame you fear. Maybe it's the truth." As she walked away, she whispered one final thing. "The real fight hasn't started yet." After they all left, the house felt hollow. The laughter, the toasts, the smiles, gone. Only Loretta remained, sitting quietly in the hallway outside my study. I walked in with the envelope in my hand, placing it gently beside the family Bible on my desk. The oak table had held family documents for years. Now it held one more. I paused. My fingers trembled just enough to betray me. I stared at the envelope, trying to steady myself. Rain tapped against the window as though nature itself was warning me. I thought, trust without clarity becomes consent to betrayal. I swallowed. Drawn by dread and necessity, I slit the flap and eased out a fragile photocopy of a deed. My name, signed. Dated weeks before tonight. I froze. Loretta watched from the doorway, silent, waiting. My heart pounded loud, thunder booming overhead. I picked up the paper, swallowed past my throat, and whispered, "I signed away my house, didn't I?" My handwriting stared right back at me. Familiar curves, the loop on the W. But the deed didn't feel like mine. I remembered a day 2 months ago. DeMarco arrived at my office, briefcase in hand, saying it was important insurance renewal documents. I trusted the words. I skimmed. I signed. He smiled wide, patted my shoulder, left. I should have tightened my glasses, I said, but I knew. It wasn't about eyesight. It was trust twisted. Loretta stepped in, closing the door behind her. She didn't offer comfort. She simply stood watching, lips tight. I turned the deed over, reading mechanical lines. Then I said, barely above a whisper, "I signed away my house, didn't I?" Her silence answered me. My thoughts spiraled. How many times had I defended DeMarco, at church meetings, at community dinners, against gossip? I stood by his side when folks whispered behind him. Now I saw how he'd been shaping my silence into consent. Loretta's voice cut through as I sank to a chair. It wasn't an accident, it was planned. She named moments I'd ignored. His sudden fascination with zoning laws, how he always asked me to initial documents in a hurry. I recalled him joking once, "Old folks don't need houses, they need pamphlets." My chest felt heavy, not sorrow, but humiliation. I whispered, "My own boy saw me as a stepping stone." I looked at her, voice raw. "What made you turn cold, DeMarco?" I asked. Was it something I messed up, or something I never saw? Loretta's answer was quiet but clear. "You taught him loyalty. He learned advantage." I remembered DeMarco demanding more when he got older, more attention, more trust, but never gratitude. I said, "Maybe I should have been softer." She shook her head. "No, you should have been clearer." Outside, thunder rumbled in cadence with my heart. Between silence and noise, I felt the earth shift underneath me. My old bones ached for a fight. I stood moving to the cabinet and unlocking a hidden box. Inside, A compact camera I bought years ago. I lifted it, fingers brushing familiar metal. Maybe, just maybe, it captured that night he handed me the papers. Loretta's eyes widened. She had never known I kept it. But now it stood between us, not just as device, but as possibility. If footage existed, it might have that moment. DeMarco sliding paperwork across the desk while I looked away. I held the camera close. I wasn't sure the tape would show what I needed. But it sparked a shift. I was done asking questions. Tonight, I demand accountability. I set the camera back in its case, but I stayed standing. My voice was flat, but firm. Tomorrow, I'm not begging for answers. I'm taking my house back. The rain pattered. The storm outside turned violent. I heard a sudden knock at the door, soft, hesitant, familiar. My heart spiked. The fight had begun. Morning light crawled through tightly drawn curtains, and I woke feeling the echo of last night's storm, my head pounding as if the house itself was punishing me. I sat at the kitchen table, the cold coffee before me half drank, staring blankly. Loretta moved softly behind me, humming an old hymn Mary loved. The quiet between us was thick. I glanced at the photos on the wall. There he was again, DeMarco, proud, smiling, always in front. I closed my eyes and ran a mental checklist. First, review the camera footage. Second, call the retired lawyer friend. Third, confront DeMarco face to face. Loretta placed a plate in front of me. She said nothing. The silence spoke of too many battles fought within these walls. I murmured, "This house got more ghosts than rooms." I carried my mug into the living room to inspect the audio setup. Then came the knock, sharp, unexpected. I opened the door to find a young woman dressed in crisp business attire holding a clipboard. "Mr. William?" she said, voice polite but hesitant. "I'm Amanda with Bright Horizon Realty. I was expecting to show this house to some buyers. DeMarco scheduled me." My heart did something I recognized, but I didn't lash out. I let her in. She walked slowly through the room as I trailed behind, quiet curiosity behind my gaze. I nodded at the windows, the wood floors, the way the light hit the mantel where Mary's portrait still rested. She stopped in front of the sofa. I asked softly, "Do you usually show homes that still have the owner living inside?" She looked startled. I thought the transition had already happened, on paper, that is. Her voice cracked. She insisted she just followed DeMarco's instructions, but she fumbled. With eyes down, she admitted she believed something was already settled legally. Her calm tone cracked under the weight of the room. After she left, I walked slowly to my study. The paper deed sat on the desk. Shadowed light danced across its surface. I considered calling DeMarco immediately, but I didn't. I didn't need words. I needed impact. I retrieved my notebook and laid out the timeline. Dates, small acts, visits, conversations. I reached for my phone and dialed the attorney friend from church. Then I called my cousin who worked in property records. I spoke aloud. He don't know it yet, but when he sold this house, he bought himself a war. Loretta nearby nodded. "Good, 'cause I'm tired of seeing you lose." Later, I stepped onto the porch. The wood creaked underfoot. I circled the house, eyeing cracks in the foundation, the windows, the front door's lock. Memories of every nail I hammered into this home flashed. I pulled out my phone and snapped photos. The living room, the kitchen counter, the front gate, memorabilia, the old rug, Mary's portrait. Everything. I needed to prove I never left. I planned to meet my attorney friend tonight. I'd bring the evidence, not emotions. Before the day ended, I swept the porch, stacking brushes and raked by the door, reclaiming space. I stood at the threshold, taking a breath. Then I said to the empty road, "Let him try again. Next time, I won't open the door. I'll open the law." DeMarco stepped out of the car as if the drive was his upbringing, not a trap. Sunglasses on, shoulders squared, music blasting loud enough to drown the whole block. I watched him from the porch, Loretta behind me, framed by the front door. Neighbors peered through blinds, old Mrs. Jenkins, Mr. Otis, silent watchers of our lives. DeMarco walked as though this home was already his. I greeted him coolly, voice firm. You forgot how to knock? Or you figured it was yours already? His lips twisted. He dropped the car trunk lid with more force than needed. He played it casual, joking. Hey, Pop, don't start early on me today. I didn't sit. I didn't smile. I stayed standing, letting the weight of the yard and the house press between us. I asked about Amanda, naming her full. What did she say to you? He stalled, said she was just weighing options. My voice stayed low, but edged razor sharp. Next time you sell a place, make sure the deed don't still bleed. Loretta coughed lightly behind me, our agreed signal. I held my anger in check. I raised my voice just enough so neighbors could hear. DeMarco's brows flickered. I spoke steady. How did you know about that camera? When did you plan this transfer? He jerked, stammered something about needing to protect the legacy. I pressed. You didn't think I was just some old man waiting to die, did you? He faltered. I named the attorney I called, hinted at the evidence on backup drives. I ain't just taking back my house, I'm taking my dignity with it. He tried to gaslight. I did this for you because you're old. You needed help. My jaw tightened. I ain't old, I'm seasoned. And seasoned don't mean spoiled. I reminded him how elders in our community endured theft, disrespect, silence. Not this time. Loretta stepped forward. If you cared half as much as you pretend, we wouldn't be standing here. DeMarco turned, muttered, this ain't over, and stalked off. After he left, neighbors drifted onto the porch, some offering quiet words of encouragement. I talked with Mr. Otis, the elder across the street. He said softly, it's good to see a man claim his voice again. I thought about all the years. Wealth means nothing if it can't protect you in your own home. Returning inside, Loretta and I sat together. I pulled out my notebook and wrote, sometimes the loudest declaration is made without a shout. I planned what evidence to show, what names to call. DeMarco's legacy wasn't going to be the one he scripted. I sat there alone in the living room, the echo of silence pressing harder than words. The memory of stepping up at the party burned sharp. Faces turned, eyes waiting, and then the mic went dead. Just like that, light to dark, sound to stillness. I had tried to reclaim my voice, to speak what needed speaking, but they cut me off. They took the mic from me, just like they tried to take the house. Loretta was near, silent and strong, just there, her presence an anchor. The walls felt narrower, the air heavy. The house, once a shelter, had become a cage. I walked to the stage area, fingers brushing the mic stand, tracing wiring hidden in the baseboard, listening for breaks, cold patches, anything. This wasn't a glitch, I said to the empty room. I remembered when DeMarco first asked about audio equipment. He deflected then, said something about setting up for next year. I closed my eyes and muttered, this was planned. Loretta came behind me, and together we called in Mr. Hawkins, our old audio engineer friend. He squeezed between furniture, shone a flashlight across connectors and tested circuits. He shook his head. Sabotage, cut wires, altered circuits. He confirmed. Someone had rigged that mic after the guests arrived. My anger welled, not as a victim, but as a man awakening. Then I turned to face DeMarco, who lingered in the hall. With Hawkins beside me, I called him out. You had access to my wiring. DeMarco stuttered, twisting his posture. I just wanted things ready for family, he mumbled. I recounted nights when he insisted on testing sound, how he asked me to let him fiddle with the audio system. Loretta cut in quietly. He's always been too familiar with your things. Hawkins confirmed. The cut was post-setup, done after guests had seated. My betrayal bloomed cold in my throat. They tried to silence me in front of everyone. Outside lights flickered. Miss Ethel from across the street emerged, standing at her window. She shouted, "I heard it go dead. Why won't y'all let him speak?" Her voice cracked like a whip. Guests froze. DeMarco spluttered some excuse about vintage equipment. But the shift had begun. Sympathy moved toward me. The truth was breaking out loud. I felt then, power did not lie only in papers, but in the broadcast of raw, unedited truth. In my study afterward, I trembled with grief and resolve. So many times I bowed out of fights. This time I lifted my pen. On the page I wrote, "They cut the voice we tried to raise. Now I amplify it with evidence." I decided to upload a clip, silent, but enough to show the mic died mid-sentence. Loretta warned me, "They'll say you edited it." I whispered back, "Let them say. Truth don't need editing." I vowed, tomorrow I speak to the entire block, not just to my children. I speak to community. A knock rattled the doorframe. My phone lit up. "Cade Marlowe, we need to talk." He showed up at dusk, stepping onto the porch with something rehearsed in his voice. "Dad, I've just needed space." "Change," he said softly. That tone, so calm, so prepared, felt like a setup. Loretta hovered in the shadows behind me, silent guard. I didn't open the door. I held it. "You had space, enough to take the house," I replied. DeMarco tried to insist he did it for me, for us, but his words felt hollow. That wasn't distance, it was displacement. Then she entered. Miss Harper, old family friend, walking in from the backyard. She asked loudly, "Excuse me, who's this man talking like he owns your life?" Her words landed like stones. Everyone froze. DeMarco's face drained color. Mrs. Harper's voice cracked with truth. "I grew up seeing Mr. William feed you, shelter you. Don't let him become a rumor in his own home." The room shifted. Neighbors peeked through windows. Alliances wavered. I stood, facing the room, facing DeMarco. "You use space as a cage to cage me," I said. And I named dates, whispers, surveys, evidence from neighbors, testimony I'd gathered. He tried to explain. Strategy. But strategy that betrays your own father is betrayal, not business. Loretta put a hand on my shoulder as weight settled in the room. DeMarco stormed off to his car. Guests murmured behind us. Some moved to my side, some apologized for trusting him. A neighbor approached, offering footage from their security camera showing DeMarco's late-night trips. Vindication flickered. But scars ran deeper, not just legal, but relational. Inside, I shook from the fight just fought. How many signs had I ignored? In my study, I flipped through my notebook, each twist, each betrayal. I etched a new line under S7 and S9. "I will not whisper in the corners of my own home." I resolved to send the footage to a trusted local reporter, public exposure becoming part of defense. Loretta returned, leaned close. "Let them see you, not as a victim, but as the owner who never left," she said. I nodded. Storm clouds gathered outside as thunder threatened silence again. I asked everyone to come together that evening. I said I had something to show. Loretta stood beside me, each murmur in the room feeling like static between us and the truth. DeMarco walked in carrying a slim folder, face composed, but I saw tension in his shoulders. I cleared my throat. "Tonight, truth isn't optional," I said. I asked him directly to explain why the deed transfer had happened. Silence hung heavy. People leaned forward, waiting for the collapse or the revelation. The air felt charged, electric. I opened the folder and laid a certified title on the table. DeMarco's signature, dated weeks before the gift, he claimed. Gasping filled the room. He swallowed, trying to salvage the moment. "I thought you understood," he said. "I did it for your benefit." I held his gaze. "So I didn't understand when my home disappeared?" I replied. I then spread tax receipts, closing statements, proof of funds, documents he'd tried hiding. The weight of those papers pressed on the walls. The balance shifted. Loretta nudged me. She pointed under DeMarco's chair. A guest leaned down and retrieved an envelope taped beneath. Inside was a letter from DeMarco's lawyer, proof of consent to relocate, it claimed. I read it aloud. Your sign here proves willingness to relocate. A handwriting expert in the group frowned. This signature is forged. The room stilled. DeMarco paled. Defenses frayed. Fake, someone whispered. The shade between truth and lie snapped wide open. I forced him to admit it. He had appraised the house, surveyed land, made deals, all without telling me. I showed photos from neighbors' security cams, boxes loaded late at night, trips to the title company. He tried to say he'd acted in my best interest, but I said plainly, doing wrong in the name of right is still wrong. Loretta's voice cut in. You sold our history while we slept. His face twisted, and then he turned and stormed out. Silence swallowed the room. I sat, chest heaving, the echo of my vindication all around me. Guests began low discussions. Some shook their heads in understanding. I thought about how many times folks told me I didn't understand money. I have learned more than I ever wished. I stood in the doorway as dusk turned dark. Tonight, I reclaimed my house, but tomorrow, I might have to reclaim my peace, I whispered, watching the shadows gather.